Okay, so hi everyone, welcome to this additional pre-recorded class. Today we are going to talk a little bit about some staves for divine intervention. So I'll just jump straight in. So, what are divine staves? What will be classed as divine staves? Within the manuscripts, we have tons of different staves relating to God, relating to Jesus, angels. A lot of them come from more sort of Solomonic influence, as we've talked about a little bit, um, as well as yeah, staves for invoking various sort of heavenly powers, saints, things like this. Icelandic galdrastafir are, as we've discussed, inherently Christian. It doesn't mean they can't be used by non-Christian people or by, they don't, just because they come from a Christian tradition doesn't mean that we have to be Christian ourselves to use them. I know, for instance, plenty of Goetic magicians who do not really count themselves as Christian. They do believe in the power that divine names have, that sort of thing. Um, but you don't need to be a devout Christian, obviously, to be using any of these divine staves any more than you do to be using any of the other staves that we've talked about and the rest of the staves that we will talk about. But the tradition itself comes from medieval grimoire magic, so it's going to be fraught with with tons of Christian everything. Um, but this is not a detriment at all. Um, So these staves we can work them for lots of similar themes as medieval grimoire magic concerns itself with. So things like necromantic work, summoning spirits, especially spirits of the dead, conjuring other, angelic forces, demonic forces, things like this. Depending on your definition of what counts as what. Um, as well as for banishment and for very strong divine protection as well. And not to make too many D&D references, but using divine staves for banishment and exorcism a lot of the time feels like if anyone's familiar with the 5e D&D Paladin's Divine Smite attack, it's very much this. This it can feel sometimes overpowered method of banishment, but it is effective whether we are super Christian or not. So that is really the point of a lot of this that we'll talk about today. Um, so our first example, we'll talk about specifically LBS 764 8VO, but then we'll also talk about LBS 97740 as well. Um, and I think maybe there's a couple in here from other manuscripts too, but I will, as we go through, I will be mentioning exactly where these come from. Um, so our first example from LBS 764 8VO. This one in particular, it's written very early in the grimoire in this code alphabet, which has been later then translated. Yeah, within Tvær Galdraskræður as one of the main books on this. It's one of the main books in the reading list as well. So this is the second manuscript in that book that is covered. So look to that for sort of I've included lots of clear pictures, but look to that for wider context within that particular manuscript, as we're only going to focus on one aspect of the spells from that today. Um, but here we can see a bunch of divine names, and this is going to come up again and again and again, with divine names being used for invoking protection, and really sort of like scare tactics for making sure that things are listening to us and things know what particular what particular power we might be calling on to remove them if they become um, what's the word? Malignant, I suppose, if they become uh, detrimental to what we're doing. Um, so it's a good sort of threat. A lot of this is very threatening magic to spirits, basically. Um, but yeah, a lot of this potentially, and I say potentially, um, very loosely because I haven't really seen anyone make these links, although, within more within wider grimoire tradition that dates, as far back to Middle East, pre-Christian Egypt, Greece, Rome as well. Um, all these areas where you have Arabic grimoires being translated into Greek, then and things from Hebrew translated into Greek, and then translated into Latin, and then from Latin to, as we go through the centuries, from Latin to every other European language, becoming some of them printed and available for various practitioners, whether that was frowned upon at the time or not. Um, Many staves and the formation of many of these staves, particularly sort of more pictographic looking ones, to me, um, really sort of remind me of the Coptic magical papyri. Um, and some of the examples of of like little pictographic things and symbols and stuff in there as well as a lot of Greek letters too. Obviously, the closer we get to the current day, the higher the number of sort of Renaissance moments of looking back to ancient stuff. Um, the more of them we have had, obviously, because we're further in the future. So it could well be that it could well be that chunks of the divine magic that we see in these manuscripts are directly, directly from older grimoires that have been copied and then, Icelandified a little bit later. Um, or it could just be, these symbols have been transmitted again and again and again. Maybe their meaning has changed, but they've been transmitted through time in various different ways. But that's an observation that I've not really outside of more sort of academic approach, which is not the way that I'm not an academic. I'm a an amateur. My interest in this is amateur. It's not. I don't have a degree in what I talk about. So I haven't obviously had access to lots of these other books, so I can't draw those comparisons as easily. But I haven't seen that many people relate. Particularly things in Icelandic manuscripts back to the Coptic magical papyri and um, other sources which no doubt have influenced stave magic over time, or been then the later influence of stave magic. But yeah, it's also this example of what we see within Icelandic practice as well, of this fusion of pagan and Christian elements as well. Obviously, the later conversion to Christianity of Northern Europe as compared to everywhere else in the south of Europe. Um, you see a lot of those ideas linger and a lot of pre-Christian practice incorporated into Christianity, especially folk Christianity. So there's a lot of overlap over a long period of time. So who can say for sure if this is directly inspired by or if this is ideas that have come um, filtered through various different lenses over many, many years. I don't think it matters personally. I don't think it necessarily matters exactly where it's come from, as long as it is practical, as long as it works for us. But that's enough on that. So I'll just get straight into the staves. Um, so this one in particular, we have a symbol that is, and what? A symbol and a prayer that is called Sancta Trinitas Etun Day 2. See, I don't speak Latin. This is obviously what's the word, corrupt Latin as well. So I don't. I'm not sure exactly how this is supposed to sound. Um, but I think in terms of speaking Latin, it doesn't necessarily matter if pronounce it because we don't know exactly um, how it was pronounced. So that's fine. But we see this very clear example of a circular seal with Greek letters inside, and then the prayer that follows is really it's essentially a version of the Paternoster. It's a corrupt Paternoster. And then what follows this corrupt Paternoster and this symbol are a bunch of angelic symbols, a bunch of angelic staves and characters. So comparing this to manuscripts that involve angelic conjuration, you have most likely, and obviously we can't say this 100% for sure, but most likely a circle used to invoke these powers, a circle that is drawn possibly on the ground, or a circle that is potentially engraved in a ring, as with a lot of these Solomonic seals engraved in a ring. Which then it was said that Solomon was given a ring by angels by which to conjure and control angels, demons, various things like this. So it could well be that this is the symbol that is drawn out onto the ground, which then we use this invocation to empower the symbol, this corrupt paternoster, to either purify or empower this circle. It could then be that these are the seals of angels that we can then invoke through the use of this circle. It's quite primitive in terms of well, not primitive. It's quite basic in terms of looking at other grimoires that do this pretty much this exact thing from earlier sources. So it could well be that this is something that has come into Iceland from, been transcribed, maybe not perfectly, maybe a more simple transcription that has come to Iceland that has then been copied out. Um, but it could very well be something practical that people have used. So it could well be that this is then a sort of simpler, and as well bear in mind that with a lot of ceremonial magic in Iceland, you don't have people of means to secure things like a golden knife, for example, a copper bowl, various tools of the trade, and they do vary obviously over all these manuscripts. But this idea of having both time and the money and the resources to acquire all of these complex tools, you don't have that in Iceland. You have a lot of people who are, no matter whether they can read or write, they still are not of great means compared to places in Europe. This is a tiny island in the middle of the sea. Um, Obviously, a lot of stuff has come to Iceland through Denmark as well, so it's filtered then through, probably the translation and transcription of Danish priests, or at least Icelanders who went to other places, transcribed this and brought it back. Um, yeah, there's a lot of variables which make these sort of more simple um, ceremonial aspects of a lot of these divine staves. That's the context of which they're in, and it makes a lot of sense that these workings would be a lot more simplistic because you don't have all the material that you need for everything. Um, but yeah, so anyway, so we see this as a common theme throughout a bunch of different manuscripts with angelic symbols, with the seal that you first need to make either as the working space or the seal that you need, which then gives you the authority to call upon these things. Um, the use of the Latin word sigillum as well is interesting because we have the Icelandic word innsigli for seal for this word. It shows up a lot later, but well, not a lot later, but it shows up sort of intermittently through different manuscripts too. Um, so it could well be that this is like a direct transcription just because of the use of the word sigillum in Latin, and Latin was taught, or as good Latin as is possible, was taught in the priest schools in Skálholt and Hólar. Um, we know that this was used. We have even examples in Icelandic folklore of specific Latin-speaking ghosts. So that we do know that there was, Latin was used in Iceland, obviously, as well, after the Catholic period, so after 1500, 1550. We do know that Latin was still used. So, it could be an older manuscript that's come to Iceland and been translated, or something from the continent. But anyway, I'm going over that again and again. But to use this for conjuration, the way that I would suggest to use this, if you wanted to try it out, I will say this is angelic. So this is not the sort of magic where we'll be invoking demons and we need to be, um, we don't need to be um, as on it with maybe the perfect construction of these circles with the right oils, the right candles, all of the other tools that you need for more sort of goetic practice. We don't need to be as on that with angelic conjuration, simply because these are beings that are not going to hurt us. If we're subscribing to this idea that angels are essentially the sort of creature of good, whereas demon as bad. Although it's a lot more sort of black and white for many different spirits that are labeled as demonic. Um, the idea of angels being spirits that will harm us is not within angelic magic and conjuration is not that's not really a thing as much. So this could well be that this is practical magic for the calling upon of angels, asking for certain things based on what that angel is associated with. So specifically Michael for the banishing of demons and unclean spirits, absolutely. But again, then this symbol could be just enough of an authority within itself that it is powerful enough to dissuade unclean spirits from bothering us. It's powerful enough to banish things. Um, Demons and spirits, and maybe I should stop using the word demons, but spirits that do recognize these Christian symbols as a sign of authority that could well prove problematic for them should they wish to stay. This is very much the idea with a lot of banishment, um, a lot of banishment of of these spirits that they don't want to stick around to find out what happens when angels come. Because I think that's, in terms of things that maybe the TV show Supernatural got somewhat right, I think that's fair in that lots of demons will run away from angelic names, from the name of God. Um, this sort of thing. So we could absolutely utilize this on a bit of consecrated paper. And paper consecration is something that we're going to cover in, I think, the third class. We cover paper consecration. We cover, I think, also wax and chalk consecration as well. Some simple methods for that from a couple of different sources. Um, but yeah, we would just simply write this out on consecrated paper. We could redden the back of this with a drop of blood, as is traditional of lots of stave work, although that's not something that this says specifically in this manuscript. There's not any mention of blood for that one in particular. But yeah, this could then be an authoritative symbol um, that we can absolutely utilize for all sorts of work. And if we wanted to try using it to actually to actually conjure angels, I would suggest using the sigils of these angels. Maybe taking a white pillar candle, this sort of thing, and carving them, scratching them into it, for example. Potentially reddening it. Although, you don't see it as much blood with angelic magic as you do, but then obviously this is from an Icelandic focus, so the idea of carving a stave and using blood to redden it no matter what is the sort of be and end all. Um, but give it a go if you'd like. It's angelic, so the likelihood of danger is less. It's not nothing, so bear that in mind, and do wear protections as I hope many of you do anyway, or use protective staves. Use any of the protective staves that we will cover in the protective staves recorded class as well. I'm recording this one before I record that one, but I think it will come out before this one anyway in the course lineup. So that's definitely something to consider. But yeah. So that's the first one. In this same manuscript moving on, we have Aronsfundur. So this is one of the rods of Aaron. This is a biblical reference to the biblical Aaron. We have Aaron's shield, Aaron's breastplate, Aaron's rod, Aaron's I think helmet as well in some references in Icelandic manuscripts. Most of this comes from biblical passages, specifically with Aaron's shield is often the breastplate that was adorned with all sorts of gemstones, which I know a lot of lapidaries. Later lapidaries, I guess probably 12th century and beyond, lapidaries will mention various gemstones that some of which I think jade is one of the most prominent ones, but green stones in particular that adorned the breastplate of Aaron in the Bible, which gave him protection from demons and devils and all sorts of things. So a lot of that calls upon this sort of reference. Um, it's a bit the idea of a lot of narrative charms that use various so things from, in particular, within my practice, things from Sussex, like a burn charm of there came three angels. No, there came two angels from the north. One called Frost, one called Fire. Out fire in frost for a burn cure. This sort of thing or Jesus walked over a river. He saw da 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 da. These narrative charms that you find, particularly in Swedish trolldom as well. A lot of these in Swedish trolldom. But these narrative charms that invoke biblical verse for protection, primarily, or for the healing of various issues. You find a bunch of staves that relate to these sort of biblical stories. So that's where a lot of this bit comes from. But in particular, the sort of shape of this one, for me, although it's called Aaron's rod, this looks, much more sort of breastplatey than rod-ish. So I would definitely look into working this on consecrated paper as well as tools. Working on consecrated paper, reddening it with a drop of blood, as is tradition. Or another method, as we will talk about as well in the third class on alternatives to blood, because there are many, and the more people sort of get hold of Icelandic practice and work it within their own framework, you discover more and more alternatives to blood, or things that can work alongside this too. Um, so we'll talk about that for sure during this course. Or probably already have, depending on what position this comes in the schedule. But yeah, so this stave of Aaron, in particular, it could be used to inscribe staffs. If you have the staff is the stang, the ritual tool of both a practical tool of a walking stick. If you do venture out into nature and do your rituals in nature as well. As well as the tool as a sort of if we're looking to examples from more sort of Swedish trolldom from Scandinavia, you have a bunch of staff sticks that you use to beat the ground, to beat evil spirits away, to knock hills, to open them so spirits come out, to fend off treasure spirits, that sort of thing. Um, so, this stave as simply a protective stave that invokes this power of the biblical rod of Aaron would be absolutely useful for carving into tools, to wands, to staves, for more of this divine authority over spirits, essentially, as well as by that protective and protective quality that you're adding to various tools and things like this. So this one for staves for staffs would be staffs for the staff would be very very useful. Or the short staff if you do have a short staff like a sort of more cane walking stick type short staff, then this would be a useful stave for that, especially if it's made of rowan wood, things like this, where we can align the virtues of these plants with the divine protection that we're calling upon. Um, so yeah, there are a bunch of other staffs of rods and staffs of Aaron that pop up, and I think I'll talk about a couple more in this class. Um, but also I think a couple in the protection class. But we could work this into a staff along with a stave like Hólastavur, which we talk about in another lesson in this course in much more detail. But this idea of authority over spirits, this knocking on hills to open the hills. Sometimes, although within more animistic practice, it would pay to come with a more sort of gentle, oh, can I come in, please, approach. Sometimes you need a firm hand. So this is a very good stave to use on staffs for this. If you have specific knowledge that you need, and you're able to, repay the spirits of these places, sometimes it pays to ask forgiveness over permission. So that's the sort of idea behind utilizing these with staves on staffs to open hills, or to fend off treasure spirits, things like that. Um, yeah, it's the authority you need for this work sometimes over the sort of niceties of much of animistic practice. Um, yeah, so another stave within this book, and many of these, by the way, are just it's page for page because a big chunk at the start of this manuscript is they are just divine staves, or things that I would class as divine staves. Um, so we see a seal of Solomon, one of many different seals of Solomon from, if we look to wider grimoire magic from all over Europe, we have hundreds of different potentially seals of Solomon. Everybody has their version of a seal of Solomon. Um, Most of the time, it invokes the name of Solomon to give authority over demons, as the angel. I don't remember which angel in the Solomon law it is, but a ring that was given to Solomon with this supposedly, this seal inscribed onto it that gave him power over these demons. You then, in that tradition, in that practice, you need to recreate this to then have a symbol that gives authority over these spirits. Um, so we could work this seal of Solomon into ritual garb, for example. We could use it as the sort of like breastplate, chest plate of like a potentially of a white robe or something like this. If we're going for more like more sort of serious grimoire magic, this absolutely could be something we could use for this. We could engrave it into a little sort of circular, disc of wood, of protective wood, or of stone, or of metal as well. If we had, a protective metal. Iron, for example, as a martial metal would be a good idea. That we then turn into like a necklace, or probably quite a big necklace. That either we use it as a sort of wear like worn bit of jewelry, like in the law. So we could absolutely use it in a ring as well. I think in the law it's a gold ring, so that's obviously quite a costly bit of kit to make, but a lot of different medieval grimoire lore calls on the use of specifically gold rings with these seals engraved into. So that's something to think about if you want, but obviously that's very, very expensive. So if you can make an alternative that is cheaper that does the trick, then definitely do that. Especially in today's, not in this economy. That's the vibe for much of this as well, as you'll see. Um, but yeah, the instructions in code as well. So we have a lot of, as you can see in the picture here, the scan of the manuscript. A lot of the instructions are in code for lots of these, especially in this manuscript. But this is fairly actually not super difficult to translate because we then have these stave alphabets put out in various collections as well. So you can pretty much identify, okay, this is the alphabet that this person has used as a code alphabet, which then is just Icelandic written in code. Translate the Icelandic, it's fine. Um, but yeah, so we can work this stave, this Solomonic stave, in various bits of ritual kit in jewelry. We could also inscribe this on a staff as well. If the staff as a symbol of authority, we could absolutely utilize this on a staff as well. Maybe even utilize it on the carve it into the bottom of the sort of stump, the bottom of the staff, to really show this authority and potentially include then ritual sort of banging on the ground, this sort of thing. Um, yeah, we could absolutely use it for this. We could work it on consecrated paper. That's what I do most of the time with these Solomonic seals. I have them on consecrated paper, and often they'll say, draw this on virgin parchment and keep it at your breast. So I draw it on consecrated paper. I put it in my shirt pocket. That's as easy as it needs to be, and often having these hidden symbols of authority as well. Um, that when you are working with sort of deeper conjuration, more intense conjuration, to have, these sort of little trump cards that are not like visible always to the forces that you're working with. Often they can feel this, whether it's on show or not. But to have it there, they're knowing a little bit more of like, oh, okay, maybe they're wise enough to be able to banish me if I misbehave. But obviously, from a more animistic perspective, from working with these spirits as maybe not necessarily the demons that they've been said to be forever. Um, we can we can create those relationships without needing sort of extra protections. Though be careful and be safe is the main goal. But yeah, we can simply work this as a protective stave. As with most of the staves in this particular class, these are protective staves. We can work them on paper. We can put them up about the home too, to repel spirits from getting in, essentially as well. It is it's the mark that says don't be coming in here because this is not a space for you. So we absolutely can use it for that as like a really sort of simple use, basically. Um, Next is an interesting one. This is Jesus Christ's seal, or one of a couple of Jesus Christ's seals. It's typically it's said it's used to dispel magic and glettingar, so like pranks, but not like Glethengut is like more sort of like minor misfortune, not necessarily like tricks, but more sort of tricks with like malefic intent is the translation for that for Glethengut. But this is used to repel these tricks and repel work sent against livestock in particular as well. And remember that within the context of Iceland, especially of medieval Iceland, livestock was money. The amount of sheep you had were, that's the wealth you have. We can look back to, the Elder Futhark, the rune Fje, the first rune of the Futhark, the F rune, representing wealth. It also represents cattle because cattle was wealth. So yeah, working this against people trying to mess with your livestock if you're a farmer for sure. However, working this in your wallet guard against people potentially working against your wealth as well. And whether that's like people doing targeted magic against you, or whether that's just like things like the evil eye or things like more sort of more commonplace anger and like ill wishes sent at you, whether it's of more of a formal structured spell work approach, or whether it's just regular everyday, oh, this person is da da da, da, I hate them, da da da, like that sort of thing. Yeah, we can work this for against negative magic sent at us as well. Um, as Jesus Christ, it is then, like these sort of he's the guy to call when you want to banish various stuff in much Christian tradition. So this is, that's as much of a sort of what are the mechanics of this as we might need. Um, but yeah, it's supposed to be inscribed on vellum, or sanctified paper. I often use sanctified paper in place of vellum. Vellum is expensive now, although it's not uncommon. You can get vellum fairly easily, especially in the UK on Etsy, quite easy. Um, though I don't know anyone in Iceland who's creating vellum anymore, but certainly in the UK for sure. Um, but I'm sure in the US absolutely as well, and in Europe there must be people on the continent who are making vellum. So definitely look into that. But it's inscribed on vellum or sanctified paper, or then some other appropriate material. I say, as in like rowan wood, um, oak wood for its virtues of longevity or protection, juniper. Any other protective wood, absolutely as well. On metal, things like potentially lead even as to invoke more of a sort of saturnine its protection because you're limiting these specific things. So protection via limiting things could absolutely be like that, or iron obviously as a martial metal. Um, but yeah, then it's traditionally placed in the barn or field because it's mainly intended for livestock. Though, as I said, with wealth, this can be absolutely put in your wallet, um, or put on in your home somewhere as well. We could even work this for more sort of more like targeted protective anti-magic. So if people are casting various things against us, and we know who they are, utilize it in image magic. Have a picture of the person, draw this out on the back, put a candle, but maybe particularly something saturnine, something binding on the picture of this person. Um, Work these methods together to stop them doing what they're doing, essentially. That could absolutely be a way to work this. Um, so yeah, next then we have the Stave of Mary. This is one of Mary's staves. It's Mary's cross specifically. Um, there's not a huge amount written or spoken about this, other than just to call upon Mary. The inscription simply says to invoke to call upon the power of Mary, basically. So it doesn't really say anything specific, though, as we know what Mary is called on for traditionally. So things to do with often protection, but things to do with motherhood specifically as well. Lots of blessings, lots of healing, this sort of thing. We can absolutely utilize this Mary cross for that. I've found it useful in candles on altars too, either to Mary, the Virgin Mary specifically, if you have a folk Christian practice around that. Often in Iceland, we have the syncretized form of Mary, Mariu Freyr, as Mary and Freya combined. So we work a lot with this particular sort of aspect of both Freya and Mary for protective work. 100% put this on altars to her. Um, we could use it on draw it out on the back of petitions to Mary that then either we could burn, use the powder for various things, or simply just write out a petition, leave it on this altar. When we feel this petition is granted, we can just get rid of it, or burn it and then use the ash to make some sort of blend. Maybe put it in salt for more particular sort of Mary focused work. Or we could utilize it in an oil blend to anoint the altar with, that sort of thing, if we want it to be like zero waste. But any sort of Marian work that we want to do, we absolutely can work this cross for that. Work this cross with her. Um, so now we're going to take a look at a couple of staves from LBS 97740. It starts off with this pretty detailed um, symbol really that invokes, like, to me there's no inscription for this, so I can't say 100% for sure this is what it's for. But as there's no inscription for this, just looking at it, there's divine names, there are protective symbols. The fact that it's in this very structured format leads me to think that it's calling upon various divine powers for protection. So we could absolutely use it for that if we want. um yeah, we see then there's some Aishjalmur, there's like Adonai, um, Salvatore. There's various different divine names, Jehovah, Christ. Um, yeah, all of these in one place. This is a divine protection symbol essentially. So if you wanted to do something a bit more complex like this, absolutely draw this out, redden it, keep it as a symbol by itself, on consecrated paper. For protection. So you could absolutely like draw this out on consecrated paper, fold it up, put it in a locket. You've got that as an extra little bit of divine protection. Um, if you go to church, you could sprinkle it with holy water and keep it on your person, that sort of thing. But there's no specific inscription for this one. That's just the way that I would use it, looking at what it's made of. Um, but uh, but that's just my interpretation of this. So, if you want to do it, then have a look and see how that might see what you might draw as your own conclusion from that. Um, but yeah, then on the following page, then we have some more code alphabet. We have angels. We have six angels. We have Michael. We have Gabriel. We have Raphael. Um, so these four, not sorry, these three, not the four archangels traditionally, but three of the four archangels. And then these other named angels, Salatelis, Augurielis, uh, Caguelis. I haven't been able really to work out what these. I'm not a scholar of for one, of Christianity for sure, or the Bible. So absolutely, this is not absolutely not my forte, um, of knowing what these different variants of angelic names are. But for anyone who sees this and can instantly make that connection, then that's great. Feel free to let me know. That would be wonderful. Um, but at least the way that I would interpret it. So Augurielis, I would say possibly Uriel, but I don't know necessarily if that's that. I don't know the significance of the 5-7 that we see here as well, because it also appears between all of the lines of this seal too. So I don't quite know what the 5-7 is. I mean, I don't think it's planetary because then it would be Mars, Venus. I don't know particularly what Venus would have to do with this sort of divine protective work, but that's it's maybe it's just something that the person who wrote this had a much better context and understanding of that we won't ever know. Um, but yeah, so I would say it's potentially the four sort of watcher angels, the Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel. Though the Uriel, it's probable, don't know though. So it might not be that. I might be barking up the wrong tree completely. But just as the names, then the names of these angels to call upon for protection could well be that. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, obviously absolutely called upon for protection in a bunch of different Christian traditions. Um, so if you wanted to copy out a little image of this, then feel free. It could definitely be something that would be helpful for protection, and specifically calling upon these angelic forces. But I don't know for sure with this one. It's just my best guess. But yeah, then moving through this manuscript, we have another Seal of Solomon. Yeah, I think like at least off the top of my head, like looking at all the manuscripts I've looked at from Iceland, there's I'd say at least like 20 plus variants of this Solomonic seal. But in essence, it's the same thing. If it's you're calling upon this symbol of divine protection from spirits. And I think within specifically an Icelandic context as well, some of the descriptions talk about using this for protection from ghosts as well. So, spirits could be, spiritus as Latin translated to ante as the Icelandic for spirit. So spiritus Latin, ante Icelandic. Um, Itlamantar, Itlamante, like evil spirits, evil spirit, is absolutely a term used in Icelandic. So it could well be that from ante we then have draugar as the sort of negative connotation of unclean ghosts or risen ghosts, uppvakningar, so ghosts that are risen and sent out against people. It could well be that that's, just a translation thing, which is why then we have it in Iceland being used against ghosts. Um, but it could well be that this gives you power over many different types of spirits, as is the law of Solomon being the sort of king of, angels, ghosts, all sorts of stuff. So it could well be that, but it might be a translation thing. Um, but yeah, we could work this as we have with the previous one that I mentioned on sanctified paper, reddened, created in the day and the hour of the sun to add in a planetary component as well, because solar power is protective power, authoritative power as well. So we could absolutely use that as a sort of, as a simple way to utilize this. I don't think with this the intricacies of this one, I don't think this is one that would be maybe particularly utilized on rings. Also, if you are to copy this out, and like you feel free, obviously, screenshot this, zoom into it. I will in the package that everybody will get with at the very end of this stave course, you will get like high resolution images of all of these that you can absolutely zoom in and work out what these are. Many of them I've also redrawn as well. But there are plenty like this where it's like the writing is illegible. It's many of them are not not particularly legible. So I would yeah, a lot of them, the writing around the outside doesn't necessarily matter. Or I think for some of them where I've not been able to read the writing around the outside, I often just substitute what appears more simply. So in these. So yeah, so Solomon Insikli, Solomon's Davidssonar. So Solomon as the son of King David, Insikli Solomon's Davidssonar. This is what most commonly appears around the outside of these. Um, this one's a bit of an outlier in that I think it has an entire Latin prayer around the outside, which then, could also just be symbolic of you're supposed to be reading this prayer while you use this stave, or using them, use them together. It could absolutely be that. Um, but sadly, we'll never know because this was forbidden at the time, and we don't have a clear, unbroken, unsubjugated approach to this. But yeah, this particular drawing of this stave is from LBS 3902 or 547472, which yeah, both of them have much clearer inscriptions, and both of them you'll find on Handwrit as well. So this is absolutely on the website that you can then zoom into and find much clearer. But yeah, with the sort of package that you get with this course, this will be the links will be there, the extra reading material that will all be there. So don't stress too much about clearly perfectly writing out the outside inscription of these, because I've found at least that this particular one is great even without any of the words. So yeah, just with a paternoster read over it a couple of times. Holy water if you can make your own, or if you've got your own from a church, that's also great. Um, yeah, there are plenty of ways we can work this that don't have to be using the exact wording. Um, but yeah, then we have a bunch of other seals of potentially seals of Solomon, though we have a couple of like this Ruther Cross, um, and in of Jesus in particular. So in the left here we have this is a Jesus seal calling on Jesus again and again in this in this Jesus wheel. A Jesus seal and this Jesus wheel, which is I think it's pretty simple, pretty easy. If you do feel inclined towards JC, feel free to use this one for sure. I can see, how many more sort of heathen practitioners would not. That's fine. But then, a lot of these calling upon, specifically in this class, obviously calling upon divine, Christian divine protection, we'll see Elohim, Jesus, all of these names again and again and again, Emmanuel, Christus, yeah. So this is going to come up again and again. But as you can see, this Jesus wheel is not uncommon. We have another seal of Solomon here in this particular sort of box shape. This nice six-armed Jesus with a couple of smaller staves as well inside. Um, Many of these I think it is 3902, LBS 3902 40 on within the links. This this rewriting is a little bit clearer. You can see Jesus Emmanuel, Jehovah Sanctus, Jesus Emmanuel, Jehovah Sanctus. You know, this sort of a lot clearer. Um, yeah, God is with us. Um, can't read the last word, but Amen. So there's a lot of, pretty typical stuff that you absolutely, if you are utilizing Christian magic, you probably know the paternoster, you probably know, various different things to be saying anyway while you're doing this sort of work. So you can absolutely include those in these formations, and see how they go and test it. Because, calling upon the power of God is not dangerous within much Christian focused practice. Here are some more better drawn out examples of these staves, these seals. Yeah, lots of Jesus wheels, so that's fun. Although I don't particularly use these because they don't really, aesthetically, they don't really speak to me. And I am absolutely a slave to aesthetics. So yeah. Um, yeah, so then next we have a stave specifically for exorcism and banishment. I find this is also pretty useful in consecrating items as well and other charms. And I particularly I use this in sometimes in tandem with a spell from Claude Lacouture's his book of ancient words and spells, which is in the reading list as well. But there's a particular consecration in that protects things from being touched by evil. Evil, as loosely as you want to use it, evil spirits, spirits in general, depending on on your opinion of what makes something evil. But you can absolutely utilize those two together. I've found success in that. Um, but yeah, this one also a little bit easier to read, a little bit easier to see the symbols, to copy them out a little bit easier, I think. Yes, there's a clearer version as well here. Yeah, LBS 3902 is where I'm getting the clearer versions from. So check that one out too. That's a massive compilation of a bunch of staves. Very, very cool manuscript. With if you can read Icelandic and speak Icelandic, even easier because it has so much more detail in the inscriptions. Um, that I go into through, like through various examples within this course anyway. Um, but yes, so we can utilize this for exorcism. We can utilize it for banishment. It is a seal of Solomon again. So this power over malignant spirits, safety from ghosts. It then is also said to be born at the breast. So put in the little in your shirt pocket if you wear a shirt with a little pocket. Um, if not, like you can absolutely, I don't know, use like blue tack or tape or something if you want. If you want to be as literal as bearing it at your breast, you could definitely tape it to your chest if you want. But working in ritual garb as well, putting it like here would be also definitely a way to utilize that. Um, or sew a little pocket into the inside of your clothes to put these little paper seals within. That's absolutely something that is later talked about in Icelandic folk magic as well, of protective staves that you're supposed to sew with red thread inside your clothing. So we can combine those methods for sure. Um, yeah, this is another stave then from LBS 97740 to call upon the protection of Jesus. Obviously, as I've said again and again, it might not be as appealing to the more heathen oriented of us. Um, but should you need divine protection, you don't need to believe in Jesus to be saying his name. I'm sure everybody has said, "Oh, Jesus Christ," without being a devout Christian. So I wouldn't read too heavily into using a divine name for protection, whether we believe in that religion or not. Yeah, specifically also for many people who are utilizing Arabic magic, Islamic, like older Islamic stuff. Um, using various different divine names in Arabic too is a thing. But you don't need to be Muslim to use these names too for the effective power that they have. So like, it's do as you want as long as you're not hurting anyone. As yeah, maybe not maybe not quoting Crowley, but in general, just be nice and it's okay to say Jesus' name for protection. Anyway, I'm not going to keep banging on about that. Um, but yes, working this again as one of these staves for divine protection for invoking this name to repel ghost spirits, anything that is afeared of the name of Jesus. And this particular stave is called the Trinity seal or the Holy Trinity seal, the Holy Seal stave, as it says here. This is this is the encyclic of the Holy Trinity. Holy Seal stave. So it's very pretty simple in its wording. Um, but yeah, so then we have two other specific staves to call on Jesus, although this also is Solomonic in that it states the name of Solomon as well. And it's also one of the staves that's attributed to Olaf Tryggvason, so the Christianizer, the King Christianizer of Scandinavia and of the Nordic. Maybe not so much Finland. I'm not 100% sure on the history of that, but at least the Christianizer or beginning of the Christianization of Scandinavia is attributed to Olaf Tryggvason, who then becomes later Saint Olaf. Um, so there's fun lore with that too, if you want to look into that. But this idea again, we can just utilize these for this divine protection, crafting them on a Sunday, so the day of the sun, in the hour of the sun, absolutely. We can use the Paternoster to empower these. We can draw them out on consecrated paper. Sometimes, with these more divine symbols for authority over spirits and demons, drawing them out on consecrated paper in blood. Blood specifically also from the right side, so the dominant, the more sort of, if we want to really break it down, to use the side of our dominant hand, um, because it's another association with authority, with dominance. We can absolutely use blood from, let's say, the right index or middle finger often is the one used, but we don't have to do that, as we'll discuss in the third week of this course, the class from that week. But yeah, we can draw them on consecrated paper, keep them in a secret little pocket that we've sent into our clothes or into a jacket, or we can bear them about ourselves on all sorts of talismans, on any protective materia, while we're doing more sort of heavy conjuration as well. If we want to mix up a little bit of goetic work with some Icelandic protective symbols, absolutely wear those protective symbols while you're doing goetic conjuration as well. Or if you just need to clear a spirit out of a house or out of a space, um, depending on that spirit, if it's an older spirit, the likelihood of it being Christian and adhering to the name of God becomes uh, much more, much more likely. So absolutely, you can utilize this for that. But in many of the same ways as we've talked about already. But we have Jesus Aloha as well. Probably doesn't say aloha, but it looks like it says aloha, so that's fun. But Jesus varðveiti mig. So like Jesus's protection I know, or Jesus's protection I have, or I hold, could be the translation of this too, if we wanted to twist it a little bit. But yeah, we can absolutely use these for that sort of protection. Um, Here, another Seal of Solomon, as there are many of these. With this one in particular, my own sort of UPG, I because it says as a biblical reference, it's associated with easing, with the bearing of the cross. So easing suffering is my sort of UPG for this. So I found this one to be somewhat, not gentler, but I found this one to be a little bit more kind in that it still has this power to banish, it has this power to push spirits out. It doesn't feel as like nasty, authoritative, aggressive as others. um but that's my opinion. That's just what I've found from using it. on consecrated paper. I pray the Paternoster three times over in Latin, um, but my Paternoster my Paternoster in Latin is still not perfect, so I read it from a book because it's not it's not fully in my brain the way that the English version is while being raised Catholic. But yeah, I would suggest also. Absolutely, also my own interpretation of this. But if you want to use it on sanctified paper, that's great. If you want to use it inside a pouch, if you have maybe a specific bit of skin, maybe from an animal like a goat or a bull or a ram in particular, these animals, these horned animals that invoke their own protection, that have this horned protective quality to them. Um, you can absolutely use this inscribed on a bit of this skin that is then turned into a little pouch with which you carry consecrated salt for various different workings and various different things. And your little sort of cunning folk pouch of curios. This could absolutely be something that you utilize in that method. Although that's my own UPG, but I've found that it works nicely. I could also have tried that with a bunch other of these staves, and it may have had the same effect. So absolutely use any of these Solomonic Jesus-y protection-y staves for that sort of thing. And then again, another seal. This is a seal of the cross, although it's exactly the same sort of stuff. We have Jesus, Jesus, Jesus Christ, Jesus, Jesus. God and Mary's son, so Christ, Christer, Christus, Christer. Um, this is it's called the seal of the cross. And then yeah, same purposes really as the other one. This easing, it's for me, it more the UPG of that easing comes more from this idea, this biblical reference of the carrying of the cross. Um, the particular, Jesus when he in the Bible and I talk about the Bible because I was raised Catholic, not because it's something that I wanted to read when I was younger. But I had to read the Bible in school, so that's fun. But at least I found it somewhat useful for interpreting the the references in various Christian staves from Icelandic magic. But the aiding of the carrying of the cross in Jesus's story before the crucifixion. Um, this absolutely, you could work on that biblical reference too if you want. But yeah, I would suggest using it as the inner lining for pouches of particular materia. If you work with, let's say, from the top of my head, the most sort of appropriate solar and sort of divine holy materia would be then consecrated salt. Things like Archangelica, the name in Latin is evocative of the archangels anyway. There's a lot of Angelica lore relating it to the divine protection of angels, simply because of its name. Um, we burn a lot of Angelica seed, Angelica root, powdered Angelica root in Icelandic magic for this protection. Working of resins like copal, frankincense in particular. Absolutely, if we had an incense blend for protection, sorry, the light is really intense. If we had a particular blend of incense for protective work made of frankincense, angelica, whatever else, pine resin, things like that. We could keep it in a little pouch inscribed with this on the inside to keep it. The idea of keeping it magically potent and juicy, basically. So we could absolutely use it like that. Although that is my own interpretation, my own UPG. But yeah, so then next we have, I'm just going to move out of the light a little bit. There we go. So next we have another of these references to Aaron. So this is the breastplate of Aaron. Um, I personally look at this as it's supposed to be evocative of this jewel encrusted, like crystal encrusted breastplate that Aaron had that gave him this divine magic and protection. So it's absolutely supposed to be evocative of that in my, to me, that's supposed to be what it looks like. We have a lot of, in particular with things relating to Aaron, we have a lot of stone lore, magical stone lore coming into Iceland, into Icelandic literature. In the Hauksbók specifically, that's one of the collection of Landnámabók, Landnámabækur of these old manuscripts that have tons of stuff, law Law and law Lore. Um, yeah, a bunch of stuff, history, stories, all sorts of stuff in these books. But you have a good chunk of stone lore from Bode's lapidary. So from a 12th century lapidary of uh, Bishop, I don't remember where from. Bode is the name that is it's the English name. I don't remember the French name. He was a French bishop writing about the divine power of stones. A lot of that was copied into this book. Um, so we have a lot of potentially a lot of reference to Aaron through this and the specific jade breastplate. We know that in Holar, one of the Christian centers. There is a collection, or there was at one point a collection of green hued stones being collected around Iceland. Um, Iceland has quite a few like copper rich deposits. So copper, when it oxidizes, goes green. So you see various mountains even that have this sort of greenish hue to them in summer, where there's like quite a high concentration of copper in the rocks. Um, so, there's this green stone law. It could all be to do with this. That's just a little bit more context around it. But as a simply drawn out symbolic seal, this absolutely we can use. Born at the breast if we want to use it like that, or simply as a protective stave on tools or carved into if we work with wooden plates, for example, that we have these staves carved or burned into if we do pyrography, that sort of thing. We could absolutely use this as a sort of, for lack of a better word, like an enchanting table of we have this symbol that invokes this divine protection. We can use it to then amplify or enhance the protective virtues and qualities within various materia that we want to bring together and sort of juice up through this, speak over it, put it in a charm bag, it's done. That sort of approach, if that's the approach you want to take, absolutely we could use that. Um, but this one in particular, even just drawn on sanctified paper, carried for protection. It's a biblical reference. It keeps you safe from harm, from spirits, that sort of thing. So that's really the most sort of basic approach to it. If we want, this is the reference to Aaron to his particular bits of jewelry and breastplate. So that's fun. So if you wanted to create this stave, if you wanted to then, as a narrative charm, read this Bible verse over it to empower it, to reinforce that, and also to learn it, so you know the law firsthand. Um, that would be cool if you'd like, but it's up to you. You don't have to. But it's here on this slide if you wanna look because you'll get all the PowerPoints as well. In the course, you'll get the PowerPoint files that you can view slide by slide rather than like pausing it and reading over it during the lesson. Absolutely have a look at that if you want to learn the lore behind this particular collection of Aaron related things. But yeah, so we have here another example of the rod of Aaron. Um, the way that I use this personally, I sort of divide these up and I'll carve if I'm working with I have a particular wand. By wand I mean like it's not, like it's not Harry Potter wand length, it's a little bit longer. It's more of a sort of like thin short staff. Um, but I've carved these into dried stalks of mugwort. I've carved these into dried angelica stalks, so they're a bit more brittle and they're hollow. So maybe not the most useful, but if you've got a skilled hand, then then carve them into dried stalks of various plants that have this protective quality to them, and use those as ritual tools because it's free, so that's nice. I would carve this into if you have maybe say a rowan wand or something that's a bit more sort of hardcore protective, so maybe like a blackthorn, so Prunus spinosa, a blackthorn wand, ash, oak, all sorts of plants that you can use to carve these into as protective wands for ritual use. If it's sturdier, carve it into a short staff that you could use to then draw circles out in the sand, in the dirt, however you want to like set up your ritual space if you're practicing out in nature. Absolutely, you could use that. I've used my ritual knife to draw circles out in more sort of sandy, drier areas of Iceland where I know that I'm not also when I've been out off in the nature, when I'm in an area that I know is not a protected place, that is I'm not damaging the moss or anything like that. So obviously be mindful of that too from a practical, more like mundane perspective. Um, but yeah, the idea again is just that it is this symbol of authority and of protection. So we can absolutely use this and break these up into various. We could make, what is this? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. We could work nine different tools out of this if we want to. Use it again and again should we need. Or make three different wands that we use at different times, whatever like layers of law and appropriate magic you want to apply it to or filter it through, then that'd be cool. So feel free to give that a go. Um, I've had good success with mugworts and Angelica, though Angelica is a lot more brittle, so be careful. Mugwort sticks, dried big thick like stalks of mugwort with this carved into. So feel free to give that a go. And then another Solomon seal. I think this is the final Solomon seal of this class. Another Solomon seal. We could work this in ritual garb. We could work it into pentacles or seals of our own for sure. If we wanted this as the back, as well as all these other Solomonic seals too. I'm just trying to space out the ways that I interpret these so it's engaging during a class and not just the same information. But if we wanted to use this in ritual garb, absolutely. If we wanted to use it as like the back plate to a actual, the seals of Solomon themselves from the Lesser Key, if we wanted to use those for conjuration, or if we wanted to use this as the back to any of the Solomonic seals for specific planetary Solomonic seals for various things, absolutely we could use that too. Again on ritual jewelry, this if we're giving this image, I think, is there a clearer one? No. Okay, so if we're using this image and we're giving it to someone who maybe has a laser engraving tool that they could engrave on like a square signet ring, that could be cool. Although, I don't know necessarily how that works, if this is too thin or too fine to be able to do that on a small ring. But modern technology absolutely could show us a bunch of different ways to work this as well. Um, but yeah, I would use this. I've used it as a symbol of authority, and actually this and another one on either side of a necklace as well. I make a point specifically, and I know this might sound really annoying. I make a point of not sharing those sort of tools in videos and in pictures and stuff, though I do share occasionally pictures of some of them that I feel it's okay to. Um, but it's more for me, it's a thing of I believe that if I'm sharing a picture of this specific tool, that might be influenced by, other people's thoughts, other people's opinions, other people's energy, once they know it exists. So I try to keep that to myself. Um, but yeah, absolutely use this for help in conjuration of various spirits. Plant spirits also, I've used this in a circle to conjure the sort of overarching plant of both a species and genus of Artemisia. So that's something that I'm working on a little bit more. And will be working on more in future. So work it for plant spirits too. But yeah, any of the other previous ways that I've mentioned this drawn out on sanctified paper and carried and is enough as well. So yeah. And then I think, is this the last one? No, almost. Okay, so the one of the last ones, I think, maybe I'll say that, and it's not true, but this stave of Mary, this Mary seal, Mary's Insikli, Mario Insikli. So this one, again, we can work this for more contemporary Mario Freya work. I would suggest either embroidering it, which will take a while, but it will look nice, into a cloth used for healing or a cloth used for gathering healing herbs as well, that you keep healing herbs in to retain this potency. Um, you could work it into an altar cloth if you have a specific shrine or altar to Mary. If you work with any of the apparitions of Mary as well. So if you're working through apparitions of Mary via saints. So St. Bernadette of Lourdes, for example. If you're working with these saints, any of the Teresas, if you're working with any of these saints that saw various apparitions of Mary, this is a nice addition as an altar cloth. For one, aesthetically, in my opinion, but also in terms of just layering up these significant things. So absolutely, we could use it for that. But in terms of more practical use, use it as a cloth. Use it on a cloth for healing, any healing work, any gathering of healing herbs, as a washcloth for washing with infusions of healing herbs. Um, Absolutely, that's something you'd use it for. If you have a particular healing practice that involves more sort of holistic approaches and you're healing people and doing various herbal washes for people or on people, this is absolutely something you could use on a cloth for that. So keep that in mind. And then yeah, next we have so this is one of the Varnarstaður, so protective staves. Um, this one. It's very clear. This is a Jesus one. We have Jesus mentioned in by two names again and again and again, and then bless Jesus Christ is what it says at the bottom here too. So absolutely, we can work this to invoke this guy's protection for sure. Place it about the home, have it on sanctified paper, carry it in your back pocket, put it in your front pocket, whatever. As long as it's on you, offering this protection. Speak various prayers over it if that's what you want to do. Definitely much more Jesus minded with that one. Um, yeah, and then I think this is the last bit of manuscripts that we'll cover for this class. But this is LBS 143-8VO. This is another Sanctus Spiritus Sigillum, so a Holy Spirit stave. There's a much clearer drawing of it here, although it lacks the inscription in the middle, which to my mind, as I've said with a bunch of these, if you're not copying them out perfectly, it's okay because who's copied these perfectly from manuscript to manuscript to manuscript? That's not how magic or language works, so it's fine. Um, but yeah, work it for divine protection in many of the ways that we've discussed. You could absolutely have it on an altar cloth. You could use it as a specific stave on sanctified paper, that sort of thing. Um, so whether you are of dual faith, whether you practice magic that is more sort of folk Christian, whether you're more heathen, whether you are just a straight up Christian too, and you're interested in Icelandic staves because they are really of Christian tradition, um, you probably, hopefully, will find a bunch of use to all of these that I've shared. Be creative with them, experiment with them for sure. This obviously is a lot more. There's a lot more freedom in exploration and experimentation with staves of divine protection because you're not summoning anything dangerous that might halt you from doing further investigation and experimentation with them. So absolutely experiment with them, see how they work best for you. Um, I would suggest, in terms of when to make them, utilize them alongside holy days, so saints' feast days, Easter, Christmas, that sort of thing. Any of the, Easter, so like Shrove Tide, Easter Tide, uh, Christmas, like Yuletide times as well. If you work with any particular saints, absolutely work them alongside asking for that saint's protection if that's something that you do. Otherwise, just straight up planetary timings. Solar, obviously, because it's the most authoritative, and solar magic as the most sort of associated with the divine. But depending on what you're doing, Venus, Mars, Saturn, even Jupiter, yeah, any of the planets can work for any of these really as well, depending on the way that you're utilizing them. Um, but yeah, so give that all a go, see how it feels. I hope this has been an interesting class for those of you on this course, although it's probably the most sort of outlying for those of you who are not super interested in the more sort of Christian staves. But yeah, hopefully this has been fun, and I will see you all in the next class. So thank you very much.